A couple days ago, Nitrado CEO Raphael Stange responded to the criticism over on Twitter and YouTube and all over from myself and others about the situation with ASA and the sort of server monopoly, as well as the DRM and everything with that, right? So today we're going to look at that internal message that was leaked by employees that he had essentially sent addressing his employees and trying his very best to respond to the criticism while using mostly a lot of fallacious arguments and hilariously pathetic language to do everything in his power to possibly create a coherent response to the backlash. For those of you who don't really understand this whole situation and why people are mad, I'm going to try and break it down really simply. ARK Survival Evolved, the first game, allowed people to host servers as much as they wanted and basically free of charge, right, off their PCs or using bare metal or server providers from a host of different selections. Basically, you could choose a lot of different providers, and basically there was no DRM or restrictions on how many servers people could be running, basically. But then with ARK Survival Ascended, they decided, let's have some DRM which attaches a server and its license to a Steam account, ensuring that in order for the server to run, the Steam account that's basically linked to has to own the game as well, which first of all links a server to a Steam account, which made it no longer anonymous, and second of all added digital rights management or DRM, which necessitated buying the game for the $40 right at launch in order to run a single server. People were getting around this by sort of understanding at first, okay, well maybe you can still play the game and host the server on the account at the same time, but this did not solve the problem. It still made it to where there was DRM in place that made it to where you had to buy the game for every single server that you wanted, which is not a huge issue right now, but it will be when they add more maps and you have clusters of upwards of 12 maps, right? That's buying the game 12 times associated with a Steam account, 12 different Steam accounts. This was unsustainable and stupid. It was such a departure and disconnect from the first game, which we're going to read into with the CEO saying it was actually unintentional, which is really hard to believe. So now that you hopefully understand what happened with the DRM and why people were getting mad, let's read what the CEO said in response after they actually removed it. Because yes, just to be clear, they removed the DRM from the game last week, which is why I was saying we sort of won. We got what we wanted, we got it removed, and we also made it where you could log in anonymously to download the server ID, which means you don't actually have to own the game to download the server. Regardless, this is what he said after the fact. One of the first things he says is, we simply have better cards in the game because of our size and reach. Stange, if you're boasting about 4 million players who have accounts with you, maybe you should look at your competitors to compare size, if that's a metric you care about. G-Portal has 10 million players per month. I don't know if it's the same metric because I couldn't find any public data on this, but come on. Are you really going to boast about the cards you have to play like you're some kind of protagonist in a video game? A professional systems admin, Charlie Powell, who wrote an article on the CEO's statement, said this sounds an awful lot like we have the upper hand now, and now we're going to fuck you. We have not prevented anyone from starting their private server and playing with their friends. We have created a process specifically for that. This is as fallacious as it is pathetic. Allow me to use an analogy to point out exactly how stupid it is to say something like that. Imagine a movie theater saying, we don't prevent anyone from watching the movies that we collaborated with these specific studios on at home. Yet, nestled within that policy is the hidden fact that in order to do so, you had to pay the movie theater $40 for every single individual movie for a different DVD player to play that singular movie. And of course, the DVD player could not play other movies, just this specific one, right? So for the movie theater to say, oh, well, you can watch it at home is just fallacious. Did the way the game was supposed to protect our interest create problems? Yes. At least they're admitting to it. The initial Steam login implementation in the public server was not ideal. We know that now. It wasn't intentional, and now it's fixed. Yeah, again, I'm gonna call that bullshit. It wasn't intentional to put DRM in the game that the first one didn't have? What was the intention? Why was it there in the first place? And how was that not possibly something you knew exactly what you were doing with? They say that without the 4 million they loaned to Snail and Wildcard, ASA would never have existed. Sure, I'll believe it wouldn't have released the time that it did, the day that it did. But is that really a good thing? Is it a good thing that we didn't get it in November or December, when it could have been even more polished and when it could have launched for console players as well as PC? Instead of the situation we did get, which is where Steam got it, and now we're still waiting for console players to be able to get their hands on the game. They say, we were the last chance that this would happen in a reasonable time. Well, maybe if Snail Games wasn't such a shit company, actually that reasonable time would have been stretched to a real reasonable time for humans to work and deliver a product, instead of what was most definitely an insane amount of crunch to meet a deadline with your $4 million loan. We can all now read on X.com the arguments of those who are angry that ASA servers can only be rented from us. You can read that this privilege, the exclusivity, is supposedly unethical. The language implies that a computer game is a common good and access should not be subject to market rules. Let's not get carried away. Oh, I agree. Let's not get carried away. And first of all, let's make it very clear that nobody criticizing you said this was unethical. Okay, if you want to be a philosopher about this, let's make it very clear this is not unethical beyond the fact that other server providers are missing out on huge amounts of revenue from the game. This is obviously not unethical and nobody said that. All that we're saying is that you made a shitty decision and nobody agrees with it. If your company didn't already provide terrible servers, this decision just tarnished your name evermore. You use an analogy of Netflix, Disney, or HBO, and you say, oh, this isn't unethical, that's gross nonsense. Yeah, no shit, man. Owning ARK servers is not in the same category as eating food or drinking water. And for this out-of-touch CEO to make that comparison as part of his argument is fucking hilarious. Nobody said it was unethical or morally wrong. We're saying it's shitty and what you did was stupid and unfair to players in this context. He looks into two main groups that were his loudest critics. First of which are content creators who have not worked with us or no longer work with us. He says they make a lot of money doing what they do, through their reach on YouTube, and especially through their affiliate commissions they get from our competitors. The anger of this group is fed much less by any ethical concerns than by their financial interest, because without a contract with us, they can no longer earn affiliate commissions. So I think it's important to acknowledge that yes, part of why I made my video is because Nitrado is screwing over business owners like myself who host servers and make revenue from that. It should be very obvious to anyone watching that I make money from YouTube and Patreon and things like that, and because of what they did, that affected me to some degree, which is why I spoke out about it. Secondarily, as an ARK player and someone who genuinely enjoys hosting servers and enjoys having the ability for other people to host their own servers, this pissed me off purely on an emotional level. And the last part of that reads as, they're mad at us because they can't make money from us. If I cared at all about making money with you, I would not have made the video that I made last week calling out your bullshit. I worked with Nitrado and they were terrible. Their support was awful. Their servers were worse. They're quite honestly the worst server provider I have ever used, and I am not alone in that sentiment. It'll take you about a split second to figure out why that is if you look them up. They do address the sort of 10,000 or more followers rule that they established, and Raphael acknowledges that this was stupid and that they need to change it. Aside from that though, there's very little they learn here. Raphael says that you can only make the monopoly accusation if you know nothing about hosting. Well, Raphael, I've been hosting servers for about 11 years, and to suggest that anyone saying you're exploiting a theoretical monopoly knows nothing about hosting is awfully ironic from a company that hosts god-awful fucking servers. Don't be unsettled. Number one, we of course adhere to our high ethical principles and the competition law. Statements to the contrary are nonsense. Did you really write this? Who says that? High ethical principles and the competition law? Again, is anyone here calling this grossly unethical and that your ethical principles are in question here? No, we're calling it shitty. And as far as the law goes, yes, you're within the law. Maybe there was some kind of antitrust Sherman law possibly that you could have just barely slipped by. I don't know the law. But that's not what I'm concerned with. Again, you haven't just cut off some kind of source of water from people that need it. This is quite literally a luxury problem, and I'm not going to pretend like it's not. This is between businesses, and this is between players of this video game. And that's why I'm concerned with it. To respond to this issue as if people are just being as entitled to servers as they are to water is the real nonsense. Neither we nor our lawyers see it as a violation of competition law that we took a risk and are now reaping the rewards. I love this part. This is the essence of entrepreneurial action. That's what built the market economies we all benefit from as citizens today. You can just feel the out-of-touch goop just dripping off these words. You are responding to the backlash with the most textbook language I've ever seen in my life. Yes, capitalism exists, and you are working technically within it. But does that make up for being shitty? Our contract with Stale on ASA is as watertight as possible. We did our job. The $4 million risk dictated that. The fact that the DRM has been removed does not affect our commercial exclusivity. Okay, sure. What happens when server providers offer bare metal and you can't do anything about that? Are you going to add the DRM back? Oh, I sure hope not. Do not try and pull one of these stunts again because people want to play their goddamn game and not pay you money for your terrible, terrible service. The last part of his message talks about how dozens of people with only a few hours of sleep are on fire day and night trying to solve for their customers, players and studios alike, any problem that comes up at blatant speed. This is not something to be advertising. This is not something to be proud of. Your employees are overworked. You admit to that. Why would that possibly be something that you should be happy about or that you should be proud of? All this tells me is that you need more employees and that your management can't even deal with the ones that you already have. You're saying Slack channels have been on fire and that people are putting themselves in the driver's seat without being asked. Yeah, no shit, man. They would have to in order for your company to not fall apart. You clearly are not running things as you should be. Your management sucks, your employees are overworked, and your product is terrible. The idea that you're convinced that 2024 will be great with all of this in mind is delusional. So with that said, please, whoever is working on Linux support, I assume Studio Wildcard, this is sort of divorced from Nitrado, but please give the players access to Linux support because that is a huge thing, and the fact that we can't is a bit of a problem for a lot of people who just want to host on Linux without the hassle of going through, Proton and so on. Otherwise, for console players, they want the game, so it'd be nice if they could play. Previously, Wildcard said nobody would play early, whereas, of course, PC players are playing much earlier than console, and I've seen a lot of people very frustrated with that fact. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is not food or water. This is a video game. This is a first world problem. But that fact does not at all take away from the fact that this business is being shitty. I'll be putting out a server guide soon for all of you who want to know how to host your own servers and who are a little confused maybe by my older guides. But yeah, that's about all I have to say. See ya.